Hi everybody, it's Dr. Nichols-Boyle. I thought what I would do is take you through one of the worst websites and one of the best websites for the issues in basic design and navigation to give you a better idea of how to analyze a site. Although you've done some of this work yourself in the discussion, I want to show you a little bit more about what all of these terms mean in case you're still struggling with it a little bit. And that way also you can know better what it is that I'm looking for with each of these terms. Okay, so I'm going to start with the Gets website, and obviously this was one of the worst ones here. And if we look at the design, alignment just means the way things are lined up on the page. So as the book discussed, left alignment is really kind of the status quo for web design. And it warns a lot of beginners use a lot of center alignment. And what does that do to the effect on the reader? Well, you can see here, one of the things is your eye has to jump, has to go from here to here to here to here to back. Whereas if it's a nice left alignment, it's just clear, very clear what the focus is and that kind of thing as well. So alignment is one of the issues here. Throughout the site, they have some issues with mixed alignment. Sometimes it's centered, sometimes it's left, and issues like that. The next one is proximity. This is a good example of proximity, the kind of main part here in design. Proximity is how close things are to each other, and that suggests a relationship between the two. So, for example, Zootopia from Disney Pictures, so those are connected to each other. London Has Fallen, and it has these main actors is associated with that. But one of the problems here is that it could have better proximity, for example, and it also looks nicer too with alignment, between some of these dates and the times. So like Monday through Thursday, why is it 6:30 here in the middle instead of just lined up along the edge? Of course, the alignment is terrible on all of these, even though they're in a grid, which as you can see is really distracting to view as well. So proximity, sometimes when there's real issues with it, it's hard to tell what section something goes in. So this coming attractions, and this is very close to that, so we kind of assume it's together, but because there's no space and because of course the crazy colors, it's kind of unclear whether that refers to this part or this part. So really having the connection of things that are close to each other, be very clear, that relationship. Repetition is the next one in design. So one of the big things with repetition is that every page within the site is clearly branded as part of that site. So you can recognize it. With IU, for example, everything's sort of red and white, right? And it has the Indiana University at the top. This is one of the weaker things in the Get site as well. So for example, it took you to this one because it's very well branded. We see Gets here, but if we go to the home page, for example, it says Gets Theater here, but we no longer have that big Gets brand that kicks us through each of the sites. If we go to Info, there's Gets Theater General Information. It's there every time, but it's not a big brand that's up at the top like on the better sites, as we'll see in a minute. And again, so here we have it in the old images, and we have it in the shows and times to some extent. We don't have it here. So it's not very well branded. It doesn't, every page doesn't look the same, have the same kind of header and that kind of thing. We do have some of the same navigation, which is what we'll get to next, but that's another issue as well. So contrast is the final one. Go back to this main page here. Contrast is a couple of different things. So the one that we've been talking about most with blogging and other activities is the color contrast. So if you have a dark background, you want a lighter font. So the white stands out pretty well against this, but some of these other ones, not so much. So we have some really poor contrast, and of course they're just crazy neon colors, very hard to read, where you have something like kind of a darker text like this against a darker background. It's a little bit harder to see here. And some of these are just hard to see because of the colors. So too many colors, it's not providing good contrast either. So color contrast is one thing. The other thing about contrast, and this is an important one because this will be a big problem often in many of the sites, is creating this kind of hierarchy of information. So contrast is also about providing a focus to the page and to the site. So here we know we're looking at gets, which is good, but where is the real focus of this page? The shows and show times, is it here? Is it down here? The digital projection? It's very, very hard to kind of figure out what the main focus is. And if we go to something like the home page, there's really very little contrast here at all. Movie information, some pictures, but nothing really about what makes Getz Theater unique. What is more information about it? A little bit here in the middle, but what our focus is drawn to is those pictures. And then, of course, we have the missing one back here at the end. And so we have some issues there as well. So this has kind of a poor contrast as a whole. Even if we go to something like the info page, general information, but about what exactly? Welcome to the theater. Now we have some mixed alignment, as you can see here too, centered and then left, etc. But it's very hard to know what is your eye drawn to with all these different colors and all this text and then some kind of crazy pictures on the side. We don't know what really the focus of this page is. It could really benefit from being condensed, maybe having bullets, and making it a lot clearer what that contrast or that focus is here. Okay, the next one is navigation. So two things with navigation in the page orientation part. So some people have been asking me a little bit more about this. The horizontal format is how it looks side to side. So unless really you have things that are pushed over to the very edge of the screen or you have to scroll side to side, horizontal format is not generally a huge issue. However, one of the things to think about with a website is that generally you are getting more horizontally than vertically a lot of times, especially if you're thinking about mobile formatting. So you want to make sure that the main stuff is above without having to scroll too much. So horizontal format is side to side, vertical is up and down. So if we look at one of the main pages, and let's say, for example, this shows and show times here, vertical format and the page orientation, what you want to be concerned about here is that you can get to all the menu items. Often they're on the side as well, so if it has a really long menu bar, you have to scroll down to get to some of the main menu items. That's not great page orientation. So you have to have all the menu items and the main information on the page above the scroll. So kind of like a newspaper, you want that headline above having the fold. In this, you want it to be above the scroll, so without having to scroll down. So a lot of the main information here is below the scroll, and you have to scroll down really far to get anywhere. And this is the case a lot of times, particularly if it kind of cuts off in the screen like this, you might not even know there is more information down there. So look for that, particularly on a home page is where it's the most important. The other thing with navigation is, again, repetition. So you want to make sure that the navigation is clear and the same throughout every page, and you're seeing the same kinds of ways to navigate. This is one of the things that actually Getz does very poorly. For example, one of the things you might not have noticed, I took you straight to the Getz site, but if you take everything and go to their main page, it's incredibly confusing. This is a Getz Theater and Getz Skyview drive-in websites. And it has a little explanation of the navigation that you can go to the Getz Theater here and you can go to the Skyview website here. And then you have to get to the other page by clicking on the box here. And at the end of each theater's website, you can get to this multiple pointed starburst to get to the other one, which is super confusing. So let's just say we started with the Getz site. That's why this one here has this strange different one that looks a little bit different than the other stars, right? But this is not intuitive, and unless somebody got to the main site and was able to figure that out, they're not going to figure out why to do that. So if you go to this site, for example, Now you can't get back to, you have to go here to get back to get shows. The only place that we have even the sky view shows option is on one of those other pages. So you go to sky view shows and now you can get back to get shows. So everything here then relates to sky view. Similar issues with obviously alignment and contrast and that kind of thing. But if we want to get back to gets, and you can see their homepage, particularly here, is really weak for Skyview. This is the drive-in part. Has this nice little odd circular centered shape here, but it doesn't even really say Skyview anywhere. It doesn't say it's a drive-in. It's for a little bit here. The contrast is all over the place. It's not the focus, so you don't really know where to look. So that's one of the issues with the navigation. But it does have, one of the good things it has is that it does have the consistent menu bar up here, except for that last one. And it has a longer page. It does have a menu bar at the bottom, which is a great idea if you are having a lot of long pages with heavy content. Ease of use, again, except for this issue here, I'd say it's pretty easy just to work around the different pages. Not very well designed and laid out, but that's okay. The links, this is definitely an issue. So if we look at something like Gets, they have whole website addresses linked instead of just say Neon Lab or Neon Lab blog, something like that. There's times where they ask you to do things like click on the link above instead of just making, like here, clicking the images new link below. Why don't they just make this clicking images new and just make that a link as well? So there's some poor integration of links throughout the site here. And because we have all these crazy colors, they're pretty consistent with having the links be, and you can see when you hover over the link that it also has bad contrast and you can hardly see it anymore. So that's another thing, the visited or hover link color here. It's pretty consistent with the links being white and underlined, but the other issue is that you have so many colors that it's kind of hard for those to stand out. Like these are white and not links. They're not underlined, but you see how that could be confusing. And again, we have only full website addresses linked, which is just really poor integration and awkward. So those are some of the issues I would see in the Get site. Just really briefly, show you how a better site looks. TED, excellent branding. The TED, ideas worth spreading, with its nice little knowledge and dangerously addictive short doses, which is a nice little personal touch. This TED appears on every page, no matter where you go. So it's always clear what site you're a part of. It's excellently aligned throughout. The one exception, of course, is they kind of have different sizes here to try to emphasize some very visual, draws you in a lot there. But I think even though they're not particularly well aligned, some exceptions work. And this is still kind of intriguing and getting us to the place. And the vast majority of the site is aligned. And even though this site is a little bit long, the homepage here, it's very clear what it's about from the above the scroll, and the main kind of information is here. They have good subsections to show you what each of these other sections is about, and they have a menu at the bottom as well in case you get lost, so you don't have to scroll back up. I think this could probably be left aligned too. That's the one kind of quibble I would have here. But everywhere else, very easy navigation, easy to find things. When you're looking under Discover, for example, get back up here, and you can just go to scrolling by topics, or you can go to Watch and just browse the library that way. You can search, you can go by topics, languages, duration. There's loads of ways, different ways to search and find the information you're looking for. They also have a lot about how to participate, how to attend, and so on. So this is very clear. They have good alignment, proximity. Like if we look back at that main page, the popular playlists are right next to each other, latest stories. They don't have a lot of extra white space. It's all very well aligned. This could be aligned a little bit better here, but generally very good. They don't have confusing advertisements in the way or any of that kind of thing. Very clear contrast, black on white, red as for a pop of color, and that makes it stand out more because they're using that color sparingly. So really good contrast with that as well. The repetition, as we talked about, is clear throughout. Good page orientation. Even the pages that are long are clearly organized, and they have the menu bar at the bottom. And it is easy to use. The links very clearly integrated and easy to see. So you might think, oh, well, it's just black, but every single header that's black is clickable and a link. So they're very clear about that, and they make it clear where you are in the site, which is something that other sites like Gets might not do quite as well. So when I'm on info, I can read it from here, but there's nothing to show me on the menu bar that I'm on info. It should be a different color or highlighted or de-emphasized, or maybe this would be a different color, something to show you where you are in the site. That's part of like leaving those footprints as well. And here you can always tell where you are because when you're on that page, go to topics, it will show it here. And when you try to select something, it'll go red so that you know that that's where you're headed. It's a different site. That's a little external. So we'll go to playlists, for example, or TED Books. And you can see here red, so they have this kind of consistently throughout. So that hopefully gives you a little bit better idea of how each of those different sections works and give you a better idea of how to analyze your own client site.